Hey everybody, Chris Brasure. Let's talk about 3 ways to pay for TBI victims' therapy and follow-up care. Now, in 2017, a woman who was in her mid-40s came to see me for help. She had been rear-ended by a large commercial vehicle and had started to suffer symptoms that included headaches. She had trouble remembering things at work that she didn't used to have trouble remembering. She would get confused easily, and eventually, after she went through some testing, it was discovered that she had a traumatic brain injury. Now, this woman was a single mother of 3 and was really not in a good financial position to pay for the care that was necessary. Now, in her case, fortunately, we were able to get a good settlement and do that very quickly. But it's still important, and it was important to explain the options because that may not be available to everybody. So there really are 3 options I want to talk about. The first one is called private pay. And for those people who are able to afford a little or some or all of the care, what we found is the most helpful is the TBI victim will have a joint bank account with the person taking care of them. Now, that doesn't mean the provider, for example, who goes into the home has access to the bank account, but what we've seen is the trusted family member or the trusted caregiver is the one that really has control of the account and makes the payments. A second option for private pay for some people is what's called a trust, and that's where there is a person that is called the trustee that makes payments for the benefit of the beneficiary. In this case, that would be the TBI victim. And so in those cases, we've seen it work. The downside to a trust, though, is it can be expensive or it costs money because to set that trust up, you really need to hire a lawyer, and I would not prepare any trust documents on your own. I would caution against that. The second way that can be available to make payments is through Medicaid. Now, Medicaid is funded by the federal government, but it's administered or run through the state. So in Texas, there is a Medicaid program, and what is available in some instances is what's called a Medicaid waiver program. And you can Google that, and you'll see some helpful. Hopefully, you'll see some help and some websites that give you direction on how to do that. And basically, what it is it's a program that can pay for certain disabilities, like a TBI victim may have, through the state. And so that may be an option. One other thing that's very important to mention is if the TBI victim is about to be discharged from the hospital or recently has been discharged to the hospital, you should talk to the hospital case manager or a social worker that's with the hospital and talk about services that are in your community that might be available to help pay for, or the TBI victim might be eligible to receive. Now, the third funding or third way to pay for the TBI victim's care is through Medicare. And there are a couple different ways that happens. Medicare is a federal program that actually is run by the federal government, and specifically the Social Security Administration. And the Social Security Administration can pay disability benefits if the person qualifies. And those disability benefits can either be replacing income, so the government in some cases will pay the TBI victim to replace the income that is lost. In other instances, it can be Medicare paying for the medical treatment that goes to the TBI victim. But the important thing to remember is there are funding options or payment options that are available besides just private pay, although that is usually the easiest one if the TBI victim has the funds or the money to do that. But there are options out there. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to look at some of the resources in our group, or if you have any questions, feel free to download any information or email me. And if we can't help you, we'll try to point you in the right direction to someplace or somebody that can.